मुशीर क़ौमी सलामती उमूर डॉक्टर मोईद यूसुफ सेमिनार से खिताब कर रहे हैं।
They have rehearsed that narrative so many times to themselves that they believe it to be reality. And no matter what you do, it is virtually impossible to convince them otherwise. So the question for me, ladies and gentlemen, frankly, is not why they have done what they have done, why they haven't been more judicious, why they haven't been more fair towards Pakistan. The question that I have to answer in the position I sit is, why haven't we done better? What is the problem? Why is it that our country's reality is not depicted as it should be? You know, I was in Washington, the former ambassadors sitting here, and they would probably recall, I always used to say that when you have somebody from Washington come to Pakistan physically, and when they return to Washington and you talk to them, there are changed perspectives about Pakistan. They go thinking things which are very negative, which are far away from reality. When they come back, they say, oh well, my eyes have opened up. This is completely different. I thought this was a different country. That's the perception-reality gap that we have struggled with. So using that as the preamble, let me first say that I do not believe that we should be striving towards one national narrative. I think there are multiple narratives that have to come together to create a whole, which is what Pakistan stands for as a country and as a nation. And narratives always have to reflect reality. Here is the difference, and I'm going to be candid, between how we approach narratives and how some other countries, specifically I have in mind our eastern neighbor, has approached narrative building. Our model is to project our rightful reality to the world. Their model is to create a whole global network of fake news to malign others. And Pakistan, of course, being the principal target, we've seen in the EU Disinfo Lab report last year, detailed account of 114 countries, 750 plus websites, fake NGOs accredited at the UN, etc., etc. So the first thing I want to clarify is, when we talk about narrative projection, we are thinking of projecting what our reality is, not creating narratives which are not linked to reality. In any case, those narratives don't hold. When you show planes flying over the UK as planes belonging to Pakistan flying in Panjshir, you will be debunked and you will be humiliated for that. The next point is, if we want to think about narratives, I want to give you my example. When I came into government, my first experience, I'm a rookie. I mean, there are people who spent their entire lifetime in government. People ask me, what was the first thing that you found different than what you'd expected? And my answer is that was the first time I really truly realized that Pakistan has a real positive story to tell the world. We actually have a story that is compelling, logical, true, which we must put out to the world for them to understand who we are and what we stand for. And to be self-critical, I also realized we were far behind other countries in terms of strategic communication. We were, and to some extent maybe even today, we were living in the world of public relations. We were living in the world of press releases. We were living in the world of responding to things at our own time. The world has moved on. It's the world of Twitter, it's the world of Facebook, WhatsApp, it's the world of sound bites, it's the world of real-time engagement with communication. So one of the reasons I immediately picked up on why we were not where we were was that we were still following a very conventional model of strategic communication to build narratives. Second, of course, there was an elephant in the room, which is that our strategic interests did not align fully with the West on Afghanistan. And since Pakistan was being seen from an Afghan lens, every single problem was being blamed on Pakistan to scapegoat us. But leave that aside, that's not for today. In terms of the narratives, I think there has been an issue of us being very conventional. The second thing I'll point to in terms of self-critique is, I think too often we speak our language to others and expect them to understand what we are saying. What do I mean by that? It's a horses for courses problem. You can't go with the same narrative and talking points to every occasion, every audience, and expect that it will work everywhere. Depending on where you go, what you're talking about and who you're talking to, it's a very different approach. Even the messenger matters a lot. So much more homework was needed on that count, on who is operating where to convey what message and how are you making that case. I'll give you an example again. Sorry, I cross my line of my talking points always, but you know, Pakistanis, very, very good, accomplished, used to come to Washington and speak at think tanks. And I was at one myself for over a decade. And when they finished their talk, I would have understood every single point they were making. But at the same time, I knew that not a single point they're making has been absorbed by the American audience. Because the approach was perhaps very good for us, but alien for them. So the second point was, how do you actually maneuver yourself to make sure that you are targeted in what you're trying to achieve? I felt, and again I'm saying I because I was new, so I just had the advantage of looking at it from the outside. Doesn't mean I'm right, but just to explain where we went with this, I need to lay this out. The third one, which actually bothered me the most and continues to. There is something in our culture of communication, less so domestically but more so internationally, because that's been my focus. We are shy in presenting our view unapologetically. That's what my view. But again and again I felt, we have a story to tell. We know how to tell the story. Why isn't this conversation being done far more unapologetically, not emotively, far more unapologetically, to clarify that Pakistan is going to do X, Y, Z because it's in our strategic interest? And the fourth thing that much before I came into government, I'd sort of thought of long and hard, was that we always talk about others having lobbies against us, which is absolutely true. Indians spend more time undermining Pakistan than perhaps looking after themselves. I have seen this, I've witnessed this, I've felt it, I've been a victim of it, frankly. If you go and look at, the conversations about me as a think tanker, half of them were basically saying, oh, this guy is a Pakistani plant. So there I thought the issue that we need to address, what the others are doing. Why isn't my voice being heard more? And the answer I reached was, how many me's are writing books? How many me's are actually appearing to give my point of view, rather than depending on somebody else to say what I hope they will say? So is my presence enough? How many of Pakistanis who understand Pakistan are in think tanks in key capitals? Mind you, I also want to clarify something. I always used to get this. Just because you're Pakistani sitting in a think tank doesn't mean you have to talk about what the Pakistani state stands for. You can critique, the difference is you need people who understand the context from within, rather than having an outside-in look into Pakistan and just making up their mind. One of my first bosses in the field, Steve Cohen, a very famous name in South Asia policy in Washington, wrote a number of books, including the first one on Pakistan Army, actually. Once told me that for Pakistan, the rule in Washington is, if you know the country from afar, you are I'm forgetting now, but you are a commentator. If you have flown over Pakistan, you are an expert. And if you've landed in Pakistan, you are a lifetime scholar. So, why am I not writing? And yesterday, as Ahmed Chaudhry Sahib, the former foreign secretary, came with his new book. And the only thing I told him as soon as I saw him was, frankly, I don't care about the book as much as the fact that you've written it. Because at least you've put out your perspective. So these were the issues that I really thought we need to work on. Let me just transition quickly to policy to say, when you create narratives, there are certain prerequisites for that. First of all, you have to have a whole of government coordinated approach. You can't have narratives in which you are inherently contradictory about what you are telling the world. And let me also tell you, this is a work in progress for us. It's almost impossible in this new world of Twitter, etc., to coordinate fully. No country can do it. And in democracies, of course, you should have different views. But on key foreign policy issues, on key issues where you talk to the world, beyond a point, contradiction means confusion. And so the more we can coordinate, the better results we will get. Second, you can't have national narratives which don't have public buy-in. I can't sit in my office and create a narrative and just hope that the entire country stands behind it. So the first one is still somewhat more easier to manage, which is better coordination, a system that works on communication as strategic communication rather than in silos. The second one really requires national dialogues on key areas of what Pakistan is and what we stand for. If I were to list them, let me just put 5 down, and there could be many more. First of all, is our character as a Islamic country. What is the narrative that we build around that as identity? Second, unity in diversity. This has been sort of the key element of tension, if you will, in society. How do we come at that? Third, human welfare for all. The whole concept of Riyasat-e-Madina, and whichever way you put it, is essentially human welfare for all. Not for only the rich and elite, but for all. Fourth, Pakistan's democratic and federal nature, enshrined in the constitution and in the psyche. And finally, Pakistan stands for peace within and its neighborhood. So working towards peace wherever we can. These 5 baskets can be unpacked whichever way we want, but essentially, in my view, a charter of economy has been talked about. I would say a charter of national security, and not a charter, but a charter, if you will, on identity. These 3 national dialogues are necessary, and dialogue doesn't really mean sitting down and talking to everybody, but you understand what I'm saying, to bring this public buy-in to our national narratives as we move forward. There are 3 words that I use constantly, and if you've heard me, you must have heard these. Approach to narratives. Proactive, unapologetic, and pragmatic. Virtually every time we communicate, these 3 principles can get us exactly where we want to go. There is no reason for Pakistan to be shy because we have nothing to hide. But the fact of the matter is, even we have absorbed Western narratives of Pakistan to the point that even internally there is a debate of whether Pakistan's narrative is the correct one or the other one. It's mind-boggling to me, because immediately as soon as you see all the information about what Pakistan stands for, what we are doing, we have a real story to tell. And there is absolutely no need to be apologetic about it. But at the same time, we can't be in the world of press releases. We cannot wait 5 days to figure out where to put a comma and a full stop. This is the age of strategic communication, coordinated, real time. And finally, no emotions required. Because we have a story to tell, we have to be pragmatic about it. And that's how we approach the world in virtually everything that we should do. So finally, let me just say that all of this is what the government has structured in a way that I think we have moved the needle in the direction that I am pointing to. A fully coordinated structures, conversations about how to approach this proactively. Of course, all of this is always a work in progress. And now where we need to work most is, number one, to convince ourselves of our story, which the world has to hear, where I repeat, Pakistan has absolutely no reason to hold back. The kind of sacrifices we have made for the world, the kind of losses that we have borne because of things that were not of our making, and most importantly, the utility of Pakistan for the world as the 5th largest country, as a nuclear power, as a geo-economic location, as a hub for trade and transit, is fairly unique. We just need to make sure we are convinced of our own strengths. This whole geo-economic paradigm and the conversation that every Pakistani official has had for the past year and a half did not come out of thin air. A lot of people come to me and say, okay, you came and you've consent. I haven't done anything. This was going on. I mean, the Foreign Office officials are sitting here. This has been going on for years and years. The issue is, how do we make it a whole of nation conversation that this is what we stand for? And what is that? Our security is premised on economic security at the core. And building on that economic security, we have a larger national resource pie to be distributed to an even stronger military security and human welfare for all. That's what we stand for. How do we achieve it? Connectivity, development partnerships, development and investment partnerships with the world, and peace within and in the region. And that's the approach we take, that's the approach we communicate to the world.
डॉक्टर मोईद यूसुफ इस वक्त खिताब कर रहे थे सेमिनार से इस्लामाबाद में।